Hey, this is Kyle. Let's write some code. Today we're going to be talking about a virtual DOM. If you don't have node.js installed, I'll put a link in the description to an earlier video about getting this same setup I have running here going. And if you don't know what a DOM is, or a document object model, you can see here in my browser, I have all these elements and they represent each of the elements that are displayed on the screen. And it creates this kind of tree structure here, and so that's all what the DOM is. It's just a model that represents this tree. Now, just using the regular browser methods, we are able to manipulate and add to this DOM. So I'm just going to start up my server here. And we'll just create a basic div element. And so you can say div equals document.create element, and the element we want to create is a div. And then inside of the div, we'll just say hello. And now we need to put this into our document. So we'll say document body. We'll put it under the body tag. We'll say append child div. And so now when we refresh here, we have a div element that's in the document body with the inner HTML as hello. So we just modified our DOM using the regular browser APIs. So to start using virtual DOM, we're going to npm install it first. So we'll do npm I virtual-dom, and then I'm going to save it to my dependencies. I'm going to fire my server back up here. And then so now we want to create this same kind of thing. So we're just going to require this virtual-dom/h. And H, you could stand for HTML, hyperscript, whatever you want. H just is a way to represent your object nodes, or your DOM nodes. And so what we're going to do, so we'll just say tree here, and we're going to create the same div. And so H takes a few arguments. The first one is the tag name, so it could be button, it can be a, or it can be a class name. My class, you just put the dot in the front, same kind of like CSS stuff. So you can still do IDs too if you do a hash, and that will just be a div with an ID of my dash ID. So for now, we're just going to create a div, the same as above here. And there's an optional second parameter that is the contents of the div here. And so we're just going to create a simple representation of the same node we have here. And then we'll just console log out our tree to get a look at it. And so here we have a virtual node that represents this DOM element with one child that's just text, and then our tag name as div. Now we want to put it into the actual document. And so to do that, we are going to use this virtual DOM create dash element. And so using this, we can create our root node, and this is kind of just like what all the entire virtual tree gets attached to. It's the actual element that lives on the in the real DOM here. And so we'll say create element, and then we'll give it our tree here. And then we can just use the regular browser API and just say document body append child, and we'll append that root node just straight to our document body here. We can get rid of that. And so now when we refresh, we have our div element attached to our body, and it renders it just the same as this. Since this is a virtual DOM, we're likely going to be updating our tree very frequently, or the tree is going to be complex. So what we want to do now is we want to be able to diff a new tree. And so doing that, we're going to require a virtual DOM / diff method here, and then we also want another one called patch, because once we have that diffed tree where all the differences and changes that need to be applied, we need to patch the actual node, and that basically applies it to the actual page here. So to do this, we're just going to create a function called update, and so whenever we need to update our tree, we'll call this function. So the first thing when updating that we want to do is we want to create a new tree by re-rendering again. So what we're going to do is we're going to move this section, the part that creates our tags, into another function called render, and this will just simply return our virtual DOM tree here. That way we can call it here on the initial render, and then here when we are rendering the new tree. So now that we have the old tree and the new tree, we can use this diff function to find out if there's anything different between the two trees. So we'll say diff, we'll take the old tree and we'll diff the new tree. And so if there's anything different, it'll give us as patches. And what we can use patches for is to patch our original elements that's in the page with the new changes. And so this is what will actually apply all the new changes to our root node. So we'll say root node equals, and we'll say patch, and then we'll give it our node that we're patching here, and then we'll give it the patches. So it just re-renders the tree. If there's any differences, it will give us these patches, and then we can take these patches and apply it to the root node. And then the last thing we want to do is set our tree to the new tree. So on the next render, it'll base it off of the new tree we just rendered. So just to demonstrate this, let's create a variable. We'll call it count, and this will be passed in as data to our render function. And so we just want to say hello 0, hello 1, hello 2, hello 3. So here when we call our first render, we can pass in the first account, which will be 0. And then every update, we're going to increment the count and then pass that down into our new tree. And then you just need a way to call update. Usually you would call update when changes have been made, and you should only really render when you need to render. But just for easy, we're going to just do it on every second. We're going to call update. And so what this will do is every second it will increment the count and manipulate our DOM virtually, and then apply it to the actual DOM, each of the changes. So what's really great about this is that it allows our render function to really focus on the data and what data is changing, and it will build out all the elements without us having to call these methods over and over. So let's create a more realistic example that involves bears here. So this is our data, and this can come from some REST JSON API of some sort, or it could just be an array here, or it could have been from database or who knows where. But anyways, this is our data. It's an array, and that's going to pass into our render calls here instead. So we'll just get rid of these counts. We don't need it on set interval. It's too wasteful. So now that our render method is going to be passed in these bears. And so we want to build a representation of these bears. And so since bears is an array, we can map over the array there and turn each bear into an li tag. So say HLI and then the bear name. And then the outer layer one that we're going to return is going to be a UL tag, and we can just pass it in our arrays bears, and that will fill up this tag with a list of bears. And so you can see here we get a UL tag with our list of bears. And so manipulating these bears is very simple. You just change the data model that you're passing in. So now we want to add bears to our list here. So we're just going to push on an li tag at the very end here. And in that li tag is going to be a button here. And it's just going to say add bear. And so we can see it here at the very end. Now the h tag takes method takes an optional second parameter. And this is a way to pass in properties, such as like style, if you wanted to change the color of the button to be red, or any kind of the attributes applied to the actual elements. You can use this second parameter here to specify those properties. But you can also register event listeners. And so right here we're going to check when this button is clicked, we want to do something here. And so we're just going to add a property called onClick. And this is just a typical register event listener that you would use in the normal DOM API. It'll give you your event here too if you wanted to to use that to prevent the default or stop propagation or any of those normal things you would do with a regular event listener. But what we want to do is we just want to add a new item to our data up here. And so we're just going to say data push, and we'll say new bear. We don't really care. So now anytime this button's clicked, it will add a bear to our data here. But you'll notice that it's not adding to the list. And so since we have changed the data, we now need to re-render and see if there's any differences in the two trees that we have from the last tree. And if there are, then it will do all the DOM diffing and apply only the elements that have changed. So it won't update this UL element, won't do any of that. It'll only add this new bear that we're adding here. So we can just call our update anytime our data has changed here, and it will re-render that. So now when we add, click add bear, it adds it to our data here and updates the DOM. Hopefully you've learned a bit about the virtual DOM, and if you have, please share this video and spread the knowledge. And if you want to see more videos, please subscribe. Thanks again for watching.